One of my followers, Derek, asked a great question. Do I think China will ever legalize? Wherever you are, welcome to another of my takes on China, and I think the answer is a resounding no. But given that China has a long history of traditional and herbal medicines, that might seem a little bit strange. And the fact that it's used in some treatments called dama, which strengthen the yin, and even the Chinese word for anesthesia shares one of the characteristics of the plant that it comes from. There's a very strong belief by TCM practitioners, and my wife is one, that excessive use can cause a deficiency of vitality, overtaxing the liver and costing the body its yin energy. Historically, it's believed that marijuana or some derivatives of it were used in acupuncture, which is where needles are inserted into specific points. Moxibustion also, and that's where smoke from some plants is used to treat problems. Now, if you're interested in learning more, it's a long and complicated process to learn, but it's a really interesting topic, and the link that I've provided will start you on the path if you're interested. Now, I know there are a lot of people around, and even some of my friends here, especially the Canadian ones, disagree with China's view on this. China has zero tolerance of recreation and illicit drugs, and a very good reason for it. There's no way a recreational drug will ever be introduced into China and accepted under the current government. And that means, since this government appears to be here for the long haul, that the answer will remain no. China will never legalize or even decriminalize cannabis use, not in my lifetime. In 1949, one of the first actions Mao did on taking power was offer a massive drug rehabilitation program for opium addicts. Some went to prison, not many. Many went into rehab. There were apparently over 70 million of them when the communists came to power. Now imagine that. That's greater than the population of the UK. And it's bigger than the population of Canada and Australia combined that were addicted to a drug foisted on the country by people Mao had vowed to remove. When you learn things like this, you see why the communist revolution was so popular and still remains popular to this day. I often wonder if the KMT had started doing the same thing. Instead of allowing what the Qing dynasty tried to stop, there might not have been a need for a communist uprising. There's no doubt whatsoever that Mao tried to avoid a civil war. There's even evidence that the US wanted to avoid it too, and Mao could have been legitimately elected if the 5-point proposal put forward by Patrick Hurley, the US president's envoy to China, had been adopted in 1944. But the KMT refused to sign it. As a result, even after the Second World War, there was a thriving drug industry. It was grown in parts of Guangdong, Guangxi, Yunnan, and Sichuan. It was sold openly in the streets and available to everyone, even children. Despite opium being the cause of China's greatest fall from grace, the KMT didn't seem too bothered about changing. Perhaps for them they saw it as a way to profit in the way the previous colonialists did. Or perhaps they saw it as a way to keep people disorganized and unable to raise a resistance, as it appears the US currently does. I don't really know, and I guess we'll never find out. But what Mao did was to treat drugs as one of the causes of China's demise and treat the addicts as victims of it rather than criminals to be punished. He appealed to the masses, he appealed to the addicts, and many came forward willing to be rehabilitated. But for the first time in history, China was controlled by the people, for the people, and Mao asked the people to collectively destroy the crops, wipe out the businesses, and change society. When I arrived in China 20 years ago, society had changed again. There was plenty of drugs available. It was possible to find drugs to smoke and drugs to snort. I even saw that myself very easily, sometimes in private dining rooms of restaurants, sometimes karaoke or KTV bars, but I saw it often enough to know it was a problem. Since Xi Jinping came to power, I'd say I haven't seen anything like that in over 10 years. I used to know a foreigner here who regularly sold drugs. He was so open about it that even people like me, with no interest whatsoever, knew how to call him and get something. I never heard what happened to him. He wasn't a friend, so I guess he just left. If he'd been arrested, I'm certain I would have heard about it. It's a small foreign community here. For a short period of time, about 8 or 10 years ago, bars were regularly raided. Many foreigners thought that they were being targeted, but they weren't. Drugs were targeted, not people. However, if a foreigner was found to have been using drugs, they would serve 14 days in detention, the same as locals, but then they'd be immediately deported. I heard of one foreigner who had children. He was arrested, never charged, and he was allowed to leave the country after the kids finished the school term, which I thought was very fair and reasonable. Now, he, of course, is now outside of China and critical. The bottom line is, if you want to use recreational drugs, there are plenty of places in Asia where you can without getting into trouble. China is not one of them and probably never will be, at least not in my lifetime. If you look at the kind of history China has, I don't think any Chinese leader would ever propose the decriminalization of recreational drugs. Who would, given the opium addiction problems of just 100 years ago and less? Thanks once again for watching my take on China. And please don't forget, if you enjoy this, like and share. And also check that subscribe button if you are a subscriber. Hit it if you're not. See you again. Bye for now.